Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Bruce. My students usually call me Dr. Sam, and I'm the professor of Mid-America Christian University's Spiritual Formation and Ministry course. And before we get into what I want to share with you today, just let me share a little bit of my background in ministry. I served for 21 years as a pastor in Madera, California, and then 12 years as president of Wesley College right here in Florence, Mississippi, where I still live. And today I'm president of Sam and Sandy Bruce Ministries, which Sandy and I, started back in about 2003. And then I've been also a professor of spiritual formation for Mid-America Christian University. And I've been teaching that since 1988 as an adjunct and then later as online. And I've really enjoyed it. And I'm delighted today to welcome you into this spiritual formation and ministry course, which I call God's awesome portal of spiritual formation. And that's the way I look at it. It's God's awesome portal of spiritual formation. Spiritual formation is what I call one of God's BLT principles. Now, a BLT principle is not a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich, although I do love those. But a BLT principle is a bottom line truth principle. A bottom line truth, BLT. Now get that in your heart, because we'll be talking about these all throughout this course. And this means that a BLT principle is highly important for us Jesus followers to implant within us and within those that we're called by God to love and lead. BLT principles are highly foundational principles, usually with biblical roots or authority, that can absolutely transform our lives, our ministries, interpersonal relationships, and our preaching and teaching. Now, one of these BLT principles, one of the most important, I think, is spiritual formation, which in my biblically based definition is shaping our inner lives and relationships with God in this direction in ways that transform our outer lives and ministries with other people. And we accomplish this primarily through the spiritual disciplines of becoming people of the Word, people of prayer, and people of worship, which shape us into people of God. Now, I've discovered that these three disciplines, becoming people of the Word, people of prayer, and people of worship, are the primary disciplines God uses to empower our lives and to energize our ministries. Now, there are a lot of other spiritual disciplines that God uses to interplay with these three, but these and they have the capability of renovating and transforming our lives and relationships. Things like journaling and fasting and meditation, solitude, and so on. But these three, word, prayer, and worship, I believe, are the primary spiritual disciplines that we need to be focusing on. And so that's why I describe the word, prayer, and worship as the triad of inner core spiritual disciplines of living inundated in the Word, immersed in prayer, and ignited in worship, which empower us to live as men and women infused with God. And as we enter prayerfully into this portal of spiritual formation, my prayer, and I am confident, that our lives will be radically transformed through the love and the hands of God in His continuing creative work in and through us. And I call it God's awesome portal of spiritual formation. A portal is a large or elaborate entrance or access into a place or relationship or a way of life or ministry. You know, in outer space, our discoveries through the telescope, the Hubble telescope, there are a lot of portals called black holes. And things like stars, as they are drawn irresistibly into the black holes by their immense gravitational pull, these stars are radically transformed by their extraterrestrial powers. They're usually destroyed or at least drastically changed into some other form. But listen to this. As we allow God to draw us by His gravitational pull of love and grace, mercy, compassion, and His life-transforming celestial power into this triad of inner core spiritual disciplines of living inundated in the Word, immersed in prayer, and ignited in worship, which empower us to live as men and women infused with God. As we do this, I'm absolutely confident that our lives will be empowered and our ministries will be energized to accomplish God's plans for us in ways we have never dreamed possible. And I think John Wesley would agree with this, because he said in another context, he said, in that divine human encounter, the connection is made, grace flows into our lives, and we are led to greater conformity to the image of Christ. And so, as we together enter that awesome celestial portal of love and transforming power, the communication between God and us, and between us and other people, becomes life-empowering and ministry-energizing. Did you see the shape of the cross in that statement? Look at it again, the shape of the cross. As we enter that awesome portal of love and transforming power of spiritual formation, the communication between God and us, and between us and those we love and lead. So you have the vertical movement of our communication with God, and the horizontal movement between us and those we love and lead. Spiritual formation becomes life-empowering and ministry-energizing. And listen, it's my prayer that this is what will happen as you and I together enter God's celestial portal of spiritual formation. One of my students' favorite principles that they read in my book, Spiritual Formation, which, as you know by now, is a text for this course. But one of their favorite principles is that my stated purpose for the spiritual disciplines is that they shape our inner lives and relationships with God in a way that transforms our outer lives and our relationships with other people. And the illustration they often gravitate to is that our spiritual formation is like our spiritual operating system, like what we have in our computers. And the spiritual disciplines function as sort of a firewall that shields our God-shaped operating system from the virus, the spyware, the phishing assaults, and other attacks that Satan and the world system and circumstances and temptations and other people can use, often to trip us up or tear down our relationships or torpedo our dreams or topple our ministries. Now, this, for me, powerfully illustrates the necessity of engaging in the spiritual disciplines. Excuse me a moment. One of my former spiritual formation students, his name was Franz Friesen, he's from Canada, and he said in his final reflection journal, now listen to this, I resolved over the course of these 5 weeks to allow God to rebuild my operating system. Listen to what he said. It was outdated. You ever been there? I have. I know what he's talking about. He says to rebuild my operating system. It was outdated, and to acquire a new firewall through the regular practice of the spiritual disciplines that I've learned in this course. And he says, it's hard to believe that this course is over. And it's been the most transformational experience in my MACU history. And he says, I'm very thankful for the course reading, for my classmates, and then he says some nice things about the professor, which I liked, but I won't repeat them to you. But now get this. He says, God knew that I needed this course, not only for my spiritual renovation, but also to endure the struggles that I would have to face both now and in the next years of my ministry. And he says, our God is so good, so kind, and so skilled in perfectly orchestrating the various events of life for our benefit and blessing. And get this last line. I'm so glad I had the opportunity to take the course, Spiritual Formation and Ministry. It has transformed my personal walk with the Lord, and I know that what I've learned will be invaluable not only for the success of my ministry, but for passing on to those God placed within the circles of my influence. And then he closed with this prayer. Now get this. Dear Lord, I want to thank you for bringing me into this course at this time. Truly, your ways are so much higher than mine. I needed this spiritual revitalization. I needed this theological reset. I needed this centering experience. Now that's what a BLT principle is about. A spiritual revitalization, a theological reset, a centering experience. And maybe that's what you need. Maybe that's why God has brought you and me into this course together at this time. Now, this testimony reflects, I'll guarantee you, it reflects the comments that are stated by probably 99 9/10% of my students that come through this course. And you know what? It can be your experience as well. If you'll enter into this course with an expectation and that God is up to something awesome in your life, and if you'll come in the spirit of the people in the day of King Hezekiah. Hezekiah was in this awesome rededication service when they were coming back to the Lord, and he said in this service of worship, now that you've consecrated yourselves to the Lord, come near and bring sacrifices and thank offerings into the house of the Lord. And so, get this, so the assembly brought in sacrifices and thank offerings, and as many as were of a willing heart, get that, as many as were of a willing heart brought burnt offerings. And I invite you today to come into this class with a willing heart and to consecrate yourself to the Lord, as Hezekiah said, and to offer yourself to Him, as Paul described, as a living sacrifice. You know, older sacrifices had to die and be consumed by the fire and absolutely annihilated. But a living sacrifice comes to God more alive than ever before. One that He can consume with His love and anointing to touch and transform you and also those He called you to love and lead through your ministries. Living in the aftermath of this course will empower you as one of His choice Jesus followers to point those you love and lead to the way home to God and to disciple them in the faith. And then they will become His choice Jesus followers who point other people to the way home to God and disciple them in the faith. And it becomes a never-ending circle of evangelism and spiritual formation and disciple making. And it all begins, as Hezekiah said, with that willing heart, with a receptive spirit and mind and consecrated hands and life and ministry transforming habits, the spiritual disciplines that you bring into this course. And following through with the commitments that you make in this course will empower your inner life and your relationship with God. And it will energize your outer life and ministries to other people God calls you to love and lead. And finally, my prayer for you is that as we together enter God's awesome celestial portal of love and transforming power, God will provide for us, all of us, many of what I call His holy ground crossing points. His holy ground crossing points. As we respond to His gentle yet powerful invitation given to us through the Apostle James, who Jesus said, come close to me and I will come close to you. I will exalt you and I will make your life significant because of who I am in you. That's James 4, 8, and 10 in the Amplified and my paraphrase. But then, as you hear that invitation, just stand back and watch the sparks begin to fly as the Creator of the universe and the Maker of your life and mine begins to empower you by His Son to become all God created you to be and to energize you by God's Spirit to accomplish all God calls you to do. And this will turn your devotional and fellowship times with God and with other people into holy ground crossing points where our dreams, desires, visions, relationships, needs, and heartbreaks all begin to intersect with God's presence, power, plans, and provisions. A holy ground crossing point is a God moment where our impossibilities intersect with God's possibility factor. His 3:20 immeasurably more principle, which comes out of Ephesians 3:20. And this is precisely what happens as you and I begin to live in constant relationship of spiritual formation, God's awesome portal of spiritual formation with God, as expressed in Paul's prayer for us, as he prayed for the Galatians 4:19, that Christ would be formed in you. And I love the way the Amplified Bible says this, until Christ is completely and permanently formed, molded within you. And I especially like Eugene Peterson's translation. He says, until Christ's life becomes visible in your life. Do you get that? Until Christ's life becomes visible in your life. And against this beautiful backdrop of Christian spiritual formation, God's awesome portal of spiritual formation, God empowers us to move from being mere Christians in name only to being more true Jesus followers. And that, my friend, is what I pray and hope will happen to you and me as we walk together with Him into those holy ground crossing points that He's planned for us for this time, where the lights come on, the connections happen, the covenants are made, hearts are renovated, and lives, our lives, your life and mine, and those we love and lead, are absolutely transformed into His likeness. So please, walk wholeheartedly with me into God's awesome portal of spiritual formation. God bless you as we go together. Mm-hmm.